This is the Chapter 3 Stigma Podcast. This podcast was created to be there for any individual who feels like they are at a low point in life and are confused, seemingly alone, and helpless in their situation. I am a recovering alcoholic, and I felt this way too, until I sat across the table from another addict who shared his story and made me realize that I was not alone in my struggles. My life was saved by this realization, and I hope to help anyone struggling by sharing my story to show you that you are not alone and that life can contain unbelievable riches and meaning. Welcome. I am glad you are here. Hey everybody, welcome to the first podcast in the series of episodes during the month in May where we will be discussing the practices or elements of living a life in active recovery. So the way that these podcasts for the next month are going to be laid out is really a progression of how I encountered these practices in my story of recovery. And I encountered them primarily during my time in rehab, but I will extend the timeline beyond those 28 days. And first up is a podcast on movement and the practice of movement. And this podcast will be quite different from the podcast that we did on physical fitness, which is one of the pillars of recovery. Today's podcast is going to be more historical and then pretty tactical. And again, the thing that I'm really beginning to discover about both the pillars as well as all of the practices that we're going to get into during the month of May is how applicable and how valuable these pillars are for everybody, not just for the addict. However, I am still going to focus on delivering this content to the individual who is finding themselves at their lowest low. That is who I am going to continue to talk to, continue to think about as I build out and deliver this content. It is kind of surprising to me as I sat down to lay this one out and some of the other podcasts, just how far I have come in my journey of living in active recovery. And I think if I would just lay out kind of everything with regards to where I am, what my morning routine looks like, what my thought processes look like in my mindset, I think it would be a little bit shocking and overwhelming for someone who might be, sitting up or sitting down curled in their basement like I would when I was detoxing, sitting in their lowest point, and to ever feel like they could get to a place where I've come actually in 11 months now. I'm recording this today on my 11-month anniversary of my sobriety date. But I think in part, that's kind of the entire point of this whole series, of this whole project is just showing those at their lowest low what is possible, and really what is possible in quite a rapid and short time frame. So ultimately, what I've come to learn and realize is that pulling yourself out of that pit, out of that low point, it 100% requires action. And that is why I believe that movement and the practice of movement played such an important role at the beginning of my journey of recovery, and why it continues to play such an imperative role this day and moving forward. Before jumping in, I do want to make a note, just because, again, I'm really talking to and delivering this to that person that might be at their lowest point, and that could be during an active detox. And if you do find yourself listening to this podcast in that situation, first and foremost, take care of yourself. If you need medical attention, seek it. Focus on getting a few nights of sleep under your belt. I'd say as it pertains to movement and the topic of discussion today, focus on walking and just moving your body slowly, preferably with somebody to be there and support you. But above anything else, take care of yourself. In my journey into active recovery, during my detox period, they in rehab, they made you wear like a bright yellow wristband. And they would not allow you to do any external activities like leaving the property to go to AA meetings, but it also restricted you from using the gym just because they knew the detox period was such a high-risk period and really don't want to overexert yourself when your body is coming down from these substances or getting the substances out of your system. So really just take care of yourself. So getting into the practice of movement, there's really a good reason I feel like that I prefer talking about it in terms of movement versus working out, because to me movement is a more approachable word and phrase, and everyone can think of a way in their own lives that they can move their bodies better, regardless of your current physical fitness level or like average activity level. Like everyone can think of a way that they can move their body better. One thing that I've found in my time in active recovery is my vision for my life as it pertains to movement is a lot more focused on like long-term goals that are like activity based, such as being able to be on the ground and playing actively with a grandchild, or being able to continue to go out into the mountains on backcountry trips, whether they're hunts or just backpacking trips. I'm finding a lot more of goals that are directed in that manner versus like numbered goals, such as like I want to bench 185 pounds however many times. So that's been an interesting mindset shift that I've noticed in the 11 or so months that I've really been focused on movement as a practice. Before we get into some of these like tactical items, I just want to make it like annoyingly clear. I am not an athlete. I'm about the farthest thing from coordinated, naturally gifted as you can be. Throughout my life, I've played sports. I've played team sports primarily, but I've had to work incredibly hard, pretty much just to stay at the C team level throughout my athletic career. I played baseball and football in high school, and just to paint a picture for you, I started playing football my junior year of high school purely to get out of having to do marching band. I loved playing in concert band in high school. That was kind of my thing, but they forced you to do marching band, and your one out for marching band was to play football. So I signed up my junior year. And then with baseball, I mean, you can Google me. I think there's still some stat sheets out there of me getting yanked from pitching within like 2 outs of a game. So I didn't even make it a full inning. So athleticism does not run through me. And again, overall, my competitive like athletic resume is pretty embarrassing. And I say that to say I'm still capable of approaching like the practice of movement and looking for gains and improvement in the space of movement. And what I've come to realize with movement as it pertains to recovery is it has really helped me set my expectations incredibly low. Before entering into active recovery, I was so hard on myself that I would get extremely upset when I couldn't execute a workout or a particular like movement as a part of the workout well, or if I couldn't lift as much as I wanted to lift, I would be incredibly angry with myself. And after entering active recovery, I really started setting my bar super low, and I've like continually surprised myself. And one of the most amazing things is because I continue to practice movement, like my gains, in the last 11 months, they're mind blowing. Like I'm in a place, as far as movement and physical health and fitness goes, that I've never been in my life. But that is because consistency of action, and that all stemmed from, for me, setting my expectations exceedingly low. Ultimately, make movement about progress and learning, and not necessarily like goal or achievement based. And I really had to work on making the movement itself the reward. And I do not believe, I could not allow myself to feel that I had deserved or earned anything by doing a workout. I, honest to God, had periods of drinking open up after I completed a hard or good workout because I felt I had deserved the drink, and I had proved to myself like, hey, I can handle it. I can do hard things. I'm going to open up alcohol back into my life. Ultimately, when it came down to it, one thing I've realized after having now the longest stretch of time where I've been really focused on the practice of movement is ultimately I was scared of getting better. I continually self-sabotage myself along the way because I was fearful of how productive, powerful, healthy that I felt. If this is your case, acknowledge that fact and really work to accept the feeling of improvement and betterment in your life. Again, in my situation, I hated myself so much. I had such a lack of self-love that I felt like I didn't deserve it. So if I had gone like 3 weeks without drinking and I was in a good workout routine and I was starting to feel physically fit and improvements in my practice of movement, I would self-sabotage it by drinking because I knew that would set myself back so much. And I truly didn't feel like I deserved to feel better. The beautiful thing about movement practice is that it really requires minimal space. It can be done extremely fast, and you can create one heck of a workout with just your body weight alone. And that was really made apparent to me when I went into rehab and I was given the constraints of the gym in there. And then as it played out in our story with Lucy, like we were put in situations where we got separated from kind of like our daily or normal setup. And, I got taken away from the gym that I usually went to. And so I just had to find ways to continue to move. And it made it very apparent how simple it really is to get in a good movement practice. Some examples of like movement practices that I've done in the last 11 months are ladder exercises where you do air squats, burpees, front lunges, and then bear crawls to push-ups. It just kind of covers everything in your whole system. And the ladder progression or workout, for those that aren't familiar, is you start with one of every exercise, and then you go to two, and then you run through every exercise, 3, 4, and so on until you hit, call it your point of return, and then come back down the ladder. So if you're going up to 10, you hit 10 reps of each movement, and then you roll back down to 9 of each movement, 8, 7, and so on. Another wonderful movement practice is a burpee max out. This one I've done while traveling for work in a hotel room, and just go for as long as you can, doing as many burpees as possible. Bonus points to the person that can take, say, like a 2 to 5 minute break and then go back at it again. The next one that I really loved and was and continues to be like a measure of my improvement with regards to movement is what I call the deck of cards workout. So the deck of cards workout is you take a stack of 52 cards and you assign a movement to each suit. So the way I've done it is diamonds are front lunges, hearts are air squats, clubs are bear walkouts to a push-up, and spades are burpees. And you flip the card over and you do the number on the card associated with that suit's movement. So, and then your face cards like Jack is 11, Queen is 12, King is 13, and just for a little added fun, Ace is 15. And then you work through the whole deck. And I've timed myself, and actually yesterday I did it. And for the first time ever, I came in sub 45 minutes. So it's a wonderful workout. And if you get to a point where you're really cruising through it, you can always add weights to the lower body movements. Finally, the last movement practice that is just like the most important, imperative, easiest to do for the vast majority of people, just walk. Humans were evolved to do this extremely well, and you don't need a ton of space to walk. Like, yes, you might look like an animal caged in the zoo, just walking circles, but at least you're putting the miles in. So what I did in my movement practice, starting from really the first day I got out of the detox period in rehab, I made it a goal every single day, because in rehab we had to set daily goals in the morning. Movement was one of my goals. This was non-negotiable for me. Because it was non-negotiable while I was in rehab, it naturally became a part of my routine. And there was some tipping point where it's just like I craved it and I had to pursue it and do it. And again, I think part of the mindset shift that really helped me was looking at it as a movement practice instead of like your traditional working out, because then all of the excuses of, oh, I don't have a weight room, or, oh, I don't have much space, or, oh, I don't have the right equipment, that just kind of goes away. Like, I bet wherever you're listening to this right now, look around you. I guarantee that you could get some sort of intense movement practice in just in the small space around you, or whatever environment you're listening to this in. So then in rehab, they had this tiny little gym with 3 pieces of equipment: a treadmill, a stationary bike, and a rowing machine. Then they had a little bit of floor space. I decided to get cozy with the rowing machine, so much so that I really don't think I ever need to or want to sit on a rowing machine again in my life. But I guess, never say never. I really focused every day on breaking a sweat. For me, that really turned into like at least a 2,500 meter row. And then I utilized the little floor space that we did have and just did movements that, quite frankly, I learned from doing Mountain Tough fitness workouts. The MGDs and the kettlebell program were what I did before going into rehab. I was always open and willing in my time in rehab to allow others to join in. The important part, though, about this is I absolutely would not allow others to interfere with my daily movement practice. And what I mean by that is, if someone said, hey, Kyle, I want to work out with you before lunch, it's like, okay, great. Like, here's the workout that I'm thinking about doing. You're welcome to join. If they bailed on me in the 30 or 60 minutes leading up to the planned time that we were going to do the movement practice, I didn't bail on myself. I never depended on anyone else doing anything for me to get my practice of movement in. This was a huge shift for me and change for me, where I started relying solely on myself. And this actually helped me greatly in the time shortly after rehab, when there's a lot of relapse, a lot of people that you become very close with in rehab. You get out and the numbers aren't the statistics are not good at all about sustaining sobriety after rehab, and there were a bunch of well-loved friends that relapsed. I never depended on them to maintain my adherence to my path and journey of recovery. And honestly, I think a lot of that stemmed from what I started learning and holding myself accountable to with regards to my practice of movement in rehab. At least once a week in rehab, I found time to really go hard. For what that looked like was either the deck of cards workout, which I would get a group of folks to do with me usually in a little bit bigger space out in the courtyard, or they did take us to an external gym like sporadically. It was a weird schedule, but when we had the opportunity to go to the gym, like the 60 or 90 minutes that we were there, I basically just did not stop moving. And that was my like really, really hard go once a week. Then following rehab, when I went to PHP, which again is partial hospitalization program, living from home, but going to group therapy the majority of the hours of the day. Again, movement had just become a part of my routine, and I crafted it into my day every single day. And I was very forgiving of myself when I absolutely could not figure out a way to get my practice of movement in. But those days were exceedingly rare. Even in the hospital, I had my family bring a kettlebell to our room, because when we were in antepartum with my wife awaiting the birth of our daughter Lucy, we had a big room, and so I used the space. And again, it took like maybe 15 minutes. Traveling for work, I oftentimes do the body weight ladder exercise in the hotel room, or I do the burpee max out, because let's be honest, hotel gyms just kind of suck. But that's not an excuse. You can still get incredible movement practice even in your hotel room. And so for those that might be just starting out or looking to establish that routine or start digging themselves out of the hole that they're in, I really think the most important thing is walking. Walk as far as you can. Put in podcasts, or just be bored and think by yourself as you walk. There's, if you are struggling with addiction, anxiety, depression, really just like a lack of purpose, there's a lot to think about. So use that walking time to try to dig deep. I think for the vast majority of people, it's the easiest entry to the practice of movement. And like really, you should not discount the art and the power of just walking. Obviously, you have your more traditional methods like going to the gym, lifting weights, yoga, other things. And again, I just have to hit on it. The Mountain Tough Fitness app has just been phenomenal. I really can't express how amazing their programming is. It helps you in those moments when you don't have access to, say, a gym or even the internet to access their app, because they teach you so many great fundamental movements that you can tap into and just build your own quick workout. So how has my practice of movement changed me and impacted my life? First of all, I craft my day around 90% of the time doing my movement practice first thing in the morning, just as a part of my routine. It's a win the very first thing in the morning, and it just kind of creates the structure for the rest of the day. I created personal accountability through my practice of movement. Again, I did not depend on others to fit a workout in or just get some movement in. I started cutting out excuses and really identifying when I was coming up with an excuse and just working through it and getting the dang movement practice in. It really did help me to practice that healthy selfishness that is required to stay in active recovery despite other people falling off or struggling. Because again, you cannot depend on anyone else being in recovery for you. You have to do it yourself. Ultimately, probably the most impactful thing for me at this point, with regards to what my practice of movement has gotten me, is being extremely capable of playing with my son, tossing him around, running with him, and just finding overall enjoyment of life with him and having the energy to match his 2.5, nearly 3-year-old personality. And the interesting thing that I have also learned is that in the space of recovery, there's a really serious gap when it comes to the importance of physical fitness, exercise, movement, and discussions about that of any kind, specifically within AA. And that might surprise people, but like the one thing missing from, AA's literature, discussions, things like that, is talking about the importance of physical fitness and really movement when it comes down to it. I think we all know or have felt like the importance of that mind-body connection. And really it's just, in my estimation, it's movement leading to just more emotional stability or fitness, which is allowing you to be better and better prepared for life as a whole. And so finally, I'm going to leave you with a thought, and it really was a note that I wound up leaving or writing on the gym whiteboard in rehab. And I actually found out well over 6 months later that that note was still up there, which kind of surprised me. But it's going to sound harsh, but I see this as really a common thread throughout recovery and just general life, really. But that note that I left read, "Stop making excuses and just do something." Again, your practice of movement does not need to be perfect. It does not need to be incredible feats. Just do something. That's all I've got today. Thank you. If you enjoyed this podcast, share it with others or give us a rating on your channel of choice. My hope is that my story can help others in their struggles with addiction or any other aspects of life that they feel could be bettered. You can follow us on social media at Chapter 3 Stigma on Instagram and YouTube. I cannot solve your problems for you, but I can listen. If you want to reach out with a message through one of those channels, I will respond and let you know that you are not alone. All the best, you are loved, and life is worth every struggle and bit of suffering you have to endure. Until next time.